Welcome to Bridges Live. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer, and I am visiting with Dr. CJ Forrest, and we're going to get there about who he is. But more importantly, I want people to understand what they hear, what they see. Take note, take notice, but more importantly, take in. And there's a difference between all those things. If you take notice, you may not be aware of what you're listening to or what you're feeling. If you take in, you may accept something, but you don't understand it. So with all that, do all three, be informed, be understood, and hopefully you'll be able to take an action. Because that's purposely why we visit with each other, why we commune, why we develop community, why we develop unity. There's some things that we just miss, and it's not because we don't want to miss, it's just because we don't share or commune with each other. And I'm so happy to bring on Dr. C.J. Forrester and to have a commune with and have a unity with and have a conversation. Dr. C.J., welcome, brother.
Honored to be here, and Barak unto you, which means blessings in our native tongue as Hebrew warriors and kings. My parents have been married an extremely long period of time, and with that being said, this year, all goes well, have been married 72 years, and the said, Israel know not who they are, and we are the Israelites of the Bible. Can't be disputed. It's never could ever be what we refer to as hidden anywhere with subliminal message, just saying that we're just Christians. Our financial legacy has to build all nations, as my parents would say. But at the same time, we were just taught to be consumers. So my parents would say academics will allow you to have the understanding to understand contracts. However, your wealth would be finding your niche. And in this case here, for me, through academics, receiving my DA literally at 83 from the University of Cal State Dominguez University, also to when I was in the military, the U.S. Army Finance and Accounting Institute. I was there. I received my PhD, my first PhD in 94, and that was at UCLA. And then at 95 at, of all places, USC, which they're normally a rival.
That's right.
Having my third, which was also too at UCLA, and it had to do with what we refer to finance accounting being one, the other as a financial, what we refer to as a historical counselor and theologian, studying Hebrew, Arabic, genealogy, geographical locations, archive information, historical facts, and then also too receiving one for business accounting, CNS corporations, business plans, a plethora of things that had to do with understanding the financial concept of this financial fair that we're living in under America or any other institution. So my parents would say, have the ability to understand spirituality, know what's going on, and in that you will then be able to help your people. So sitting on 5 boards and being a Mason and a shrine and various things, I've been privy as I travel. I lived in Panama, Brazil, a number of Africa. I've seen our people's how they live. And I see it doesn't matter how melanated they are, no matter where they're at, there's generational curses, incantations, conjurations, all operating against them because they don't know who they are when they were dispersed, as it talked about in Deuteronomy 28, verses 47 to 68. You'd be dispersed throughout the world. You'd go into another Egypt. Egypt, of course, is a Latin word. It's not a Hebraic word. Israel, original word. And it said that because of our disobedience on worshiping and following Elohim, small deities, and following again against the will of Yahweh, because we are Yahweh's children. You know, the word God is a word from Gadriel, Gaderel, and that is the name, if you read the Apocrypha in the 69th chapter, for referred to as Satan. That is his name, because Satan is, of course, the name for the adversary. But his name is Gadriel in the Hebraic sense. And so we were never meant to be saying God. It was always Elohim, always Yahweh. It had nothing to do with God or Jehovah. The J was not invented until 1525 AD. Prior to that, they were always calling him Yahweh.
Brother CJ, let me slow you down, brother, and let me greet you from breast to breast and mouth to ear. As a fellow traveler myself, we will meet into the east. That's for sure, right? And that's where the light will shine upon us. And we will always be lifted up by hand to hand and through the lion's paw. So
Yes.
now, here's the thing, and we'll get into financial education. We'll get into economic depravity, which we have caused upon ourselves. But when we slow this down and we talk about the community of the melanin, the community of people, the community or the disenfranchised of people's mental health, spiritual health, they're looking for lifelines to grab a hold of. But again, not knowing yourself, they're still going to drown. How does a person recognize that they don't know themselves?
They can see that, as they've seen with George Floyd and so many other atrocities, that we are different, we are unique, and that the world has never understood us, because being Yahweh's people, he requires us to first worship him and remove the element of religiosity away from us. We have become a religious group, but not a spiritual group, of not discerning that through wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, discernment, which way to go in order to be enlightened, especially by the great architect of the universe. That mindset.
But here's the thing: if through being a captive from the captors, they purposely destroyed our spirituality and brought in the religion to keep us as working cattle.
Yes.
Because if we know who they are, it becomes a strength, and that's something that the captives could not, would not, and should not ever allow. Because he had over 30 different types of people brought over here in the Atlantic area, 30 different groups of 30, I mean, there's probably more. And not all language was the same, but they did have the one thing, and that was spirituality.
Yes.
And they removed that through types of reconditioning, we'll call it. But now we're trying to allow people to hear their ancestors, allow people to hear their spirituality, not through religion, but through their connection.
Yes.
And they're blocking it out by material and trauma. And they go hand in hand.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. Even when one looks at the financial issues that happen in our melanated brothers and sisters family, every month and a half, there's a pagan holiday.
Yeah.
Being the fact it's a pagan holiday, meaning it's not biblical in the first place, they'll never find such. Then they find that the system says it's time to go and spend money that they don't have. Again, you have 72% of our people living in apartments. They don't live in a house. You're talking about a group of people spend between, it's estimated 140 to 145 billion to up to $560 billion in all kinds of ventures that they've spent money in that they don't even know exist. It's estimated that if we kept at least a tenth of that we would never be without being able to have a house or start businesses, or our children go into our own personal academic educational schools. We could begin to move forward. However, again, the system, however, has placed them in the mindset. They say it's Santa Claus time. Yahshua was born anywhere between the 29th of September and October the 10th. It has nothing to do with the 25th of December. No. We just spring. If you talk about spring time, or if you look at January, the biblical understanding of the new year always began in springtime. That's why bloom and everything. January was always the Nordic, or the Bible referred to the European descendants as the Edomite.
That's right.
His January, and it's during the dead of winter, He says, this is the new year. Again, everyone else knew New Year meant flowers, everything procreating after its own kind. Makes no sense at all. The fact that they have Valentine's Day where two men's heads were cut off and all this, these are the same Valentine's in it. What it has to do with giving flowers and candy has nothing to do. Again, it's all commercialized, no spirituality, and it keeps us in bondage if we maintain that. If we begin to remove ourselves from the pagan holidays, you'll find that our households will maintain more than enough money to start entrepreneurship, developing businesses, having.
But here's the thing: it's more of a we very few. And when we're talking about very few, well, we have 350 million people in the United States. There's 7 billion people worldwide. The melanin people make up over 70% of that, right? Now, let's just talk about here in these United States that is Eurocentric Western derivatives of, right? The miseducation, it wasn't miseducation, it was purposeful to have its own direction. And so when we tell people, if you're not reading, and I'm not just talking about comic books and things like that, if you're not researching and studying, you're still being consumed by the captor. You're still being in bondage by the things you don't know and the things you don't even question. And that's something people are still struggling through their video games and I'm a sports fan, but I don't get consumed by it.
I understand.
But people are so consumed by their woes, their fears, their traumas, and what they believe they should have or don't have. Now, before we get going, and you think about that, and I do, because it is live, and I am in Maryland, and recently, today, this morning, an apartment building exploded. There are several people without homes right now. I want to send my prayers out to all the people that was working on that disaster, all the volunteers that we mobilized to get out there. I'm on the board of the Red Cross in this county, so disasters happens in this place, that place, and around the world. But it's the service and sacrifice of humanity when we serve the other that is the most high in praise. And I want to verbally, publicly praise those people right now and saying thank you. And please pray for those people. Because so often we get stuck in going back to what we don't have, what we want, and yet we're still enslaved with that mentality of fear and trauma. We want to get people out of that.
I second that motion in reference to the prayer that you've eloquently shared for people to go ahead and to launch, because Yahweh will hear, and He does hear, and prior to our prayers on what our needs are, especially when it comes to catastrophe and issues, crises, and the levels of problems of life. So here on reference to that, because again, no one wants to go through that, especially during a pandemic and going up and et cetera, et cetera. So yes, my prayers go out with you concerning that, dear brother.
How we know we need to re-educate, but here's the thing: we're not re-educating, we're reconditioning, and that's a difference. Because until we recondition you, you're unable to be educated.
Yes, totally. The system definitely creates channelism, as you mentioned, the channel mentality of just moving people back and forth and of not having a concept of the subliminal messages that are being done to them through television watching, or as they say, his vision that is shared with the masses on why they do or do not do the things they do in order for them to survive or leave a legacy for those that come after them in this corrupt system that we're in. That's why every time you look, everything is told, doesn't matter if it's from the president and down, everything is, well, don't be concerned about it. It's going to get better. No, it can't get better. The system has to totally change. When I say that, meaning even to go ahead and get people working and to get the businesses where they're hiring at a massively level of high academics and along with manual workers. All one has to do is totally what they refer to as reboot the system by bankruptcy. They told them that we're going to start everything off. Those that have mortgages that are behind, right, we're going to forgiveness on that. The credit card situation, et cetera, academics, you can't afford to pay back the tuition, paid for. And then began again to go ahead and develop a currency that works, because the dollar isn't worth the paper it's printed on, literally. No. That's why it's called fiat, right. Phony.
It is phony. That
has to psychologically have a value in order for people to even trust it. But America's been bankrupt, my estimation, since the 1970s. Because even I am in California, but in Los Angeles, the two twin towers there are not owned they're owned by the Saudi. The word Saudi means Black Arabians. You have the Asian millionaires and billionaires that own those areas. So America is in bankrupt status and has been there for years. And if anybody really began to share that at a massive level, they'll realize they don't have any money in the bank, and there's no money in gold at Fort Knox. That thing was sold years ago. So I'm saying that to say that they need to go ahead and re-snuff the system, get rid of all the debt factor. Also to Bitcoin, they thought it was going to come and go. It's making millionaires. It still is electronic. I don't trust it anymore, not do anything else. But I can definitely tell you that's why you find so many people gravitating towards Bitcoin, because they see that the dollar doesn't have anything, and stock markets is just too volatile.
Well, so in El Salvador, they tried to lift up the whole country via Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yes. Right? The president acknowledged, this is what our currency is going to be. But here's the thing. When it comes to Black community, specifically, the melanin people, they're so used to trading their hard work for value.
Here.
And not valuing who they are first.
Well said, Dr. Dyer, well said.
How do we get them out of the cattle? They still thinking they're pulling ox carts.
That is true. We need to get our own schools and our own conferences sharing with the churches on how to elaborate on what we need to do. Because again, a simulation isn't working for us. It never has.
No.
It never. We've been taught that if you have your own, that shows that you're not American enough. You're forgetting about the late Martin Luther King. The late Martin Luther King made a statement too. He realized that later on, prior to his death,
that's right.
that was. He was, after getting hit in the head with the billy club so many times, he had a conversation with the late Malcolm X, and he said, I see exactly what you mean.
That's
Malcolm.
exactly what tell him, brother, because a lot of people don't know they had that conversation. And Martin was like, I see what you're talking about.
Come on, man. So, yes. So he realized, too, he was changing direction because too many people were getting hurt and killed. They were talking about raping his wife and doing some things to his children, as well as what he personally had seen. And right before the change came to where he was going to take a more of a militant approach, which is biblically to do so. The thing about letting someone hit you and turn the other cheek, when that was being stated, it was a way in which if someone hit you, they had to compensate you for it. You incarcerate you, take everything from you, and then you're talking about just as I am without one plea, but that your blood was shed. That's not what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. Religiosity has misquoted, and it says the translation has not been the transliteration on what is being shared with, and when you're talking about being passive versus aggressive. Remember, Yahweh said himself, he said, when I come back, if you read Malachi chapter 1, he's talking about Jacob. He's talking about us as his people. He said, Jacob I love, but Esau I hate. When I come back, I'm going to destroy him. He's talking about what is referred to as the European nations. Those that have, of course, assimilated us, those have victimized us, that have, of course, tarred and feathers, raped us, and et cetera, et cetera. He said, I'm coming back. That's not a passive deity. That's not the Almighty sitting there with flowers talking about, I am loved. And no, he said, yes, I love you. But he says, only according to, if you follow my precepts, ordinances, commandments, and judgments, do I love you. Other than that, I'm not talking about kumbaya, which where we get the word Yah from.
Well,
Kumbaya, come
yeah.
by here, Yah. Come by here. He said, when I come by, he said, if you don't have your sword and be taking care of business, and I'm talking about like the men taking care of their families as Hebrew men, our Hebrew beautiful women taking care of praying and interceding for the men, the children being disobedient through academics, through education, through spirituality and not religiosity. All of these things make a unit. And if the father is not the priesthood or the three P's, the priesthood, the provider, and protector, you have an issue. You just have a man instead of the man. If you don't have a woman who is the three D's, delicious, dainty, and quite lovable, then you have a woman, but you don't have the woman. So Yahweh has a structure for his children, and he says, my Hebrew children, how I love you. He said, and yet I long to love you, yet you've assimilated, no matter where you go, into systems that allow you to have witchcraft, incantations, conjuration, and as I mentioned, other things that separate the love from Yahweh to his. Please.
But most of the things that people get so disconnected from is again not being taught by their people. And the melanin Black America is one of the only groups in these Americas that has not been taught by our people. We let other people teach us. We let other people take us away from our own brilliantness. We let other people use us for our abilities, but we don't take our abilities to use for ourselves or our community.
I totally agree. That's why even behind you, where it says genius is common, we realize that genius is not common if one doesn't understand the concept of that you already have brilliancy in order to develop these nations as we have worldwide, because really the world makes up 90% melanated people, 10% non-melanated people who control basically almost 98% of the wealth. Mm-hmm. And so you look at that and you say to yourself, okay, if you have someone telling you through religiosity that you're a Christian, because remember, once one was caught, you're talking about Israel was 2,108 miles away from Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Shanghai, and Senegal, which we ran from our lives in 70 AD, out of that area, down into those areas again, Mali, Shanghai, Ghana, Nigeria, and even Gambia, which we were there. You look at a map, 1747, you'll see that it said the kingdom of Huda, Yuda. That's our people. It said that when they called us, because the other nations feared us, I mean, we were fierce warriors. It said, but Yahweh said we began to assimilate, again, doing things we ought not, the idol worship, the blood drinking like vampires and the tattoos and all. Yahweh said that we would go into captivity, which is true. They would take us to Gory Island, the door of no return. And then what would happen? It said a Christian priest would say, now your name is Joe. Yeah. But as they were getting on there, they said their name was Yosef, Miriam, Joseph, Mary, for Matthew. We knew who we were. We came aboard these ships. So when we got there, that's why the thing is, are you Toby? Or are you Kid Cook? So
here's the thing. Most people think, if you take, we both was educated here in the Eurocentric world, and still, you still take that education and go outwardly, further or deeper into what you call our historical understanding, right? You took what they taught you and learn what they were thinking, and then we had to go and learn what we know, right? Because they're not the same. You ask most people taught in the U.S., and you ask them, when does civilization start? They'll start around Rome. They'll start around maybe a little bit before BC. The pyramids were still built 2,000 years before that.
Exactly.
But yet, most people don't understand the beginning or the construct or the deconstruction of what we are.
Yes.
That's where our miseducation has been started. People think it started from the Atlantic slave trade. It's sad.
Yes. And at the same time, the system, once you start knowing the subliminal messages that are being shared through social media, or as you mentioned, religiosity, or any type of genre that we've been involved in, we start realizing that every other nation benefits from our captivity and bondage of us not knowing what's going on. with the exception of us. We walk around. Why do you think we were constantly saying, so what's going on?
What's going on?
What's going on? What's happening? What's happening? What's going on? No other nation was saying that but us. What's happening? Can you tell what? And the other people greet each other, give salutation. How are you doing today?
Right.
But we've always had something saying, what's happening around us?
Right.
Wait, what? The murder, the killing, the lack of appreciation of who we are, the financial issues and crises. What's happening? Why are so many of our people getting divorced? Or why is the system against it? Why are the laws? Why is there two sets of law? We're constantly saying that. So I totally agree.
So let's get into the financial. And Dr. George Fraser, who I just consider a friend, he's been on my show many times, and he told me this, I would have to say, 10 years ago, that we are heading towards a second captivity of slavery, economically, if we don't pull our stuff together. He said we're heading towards that 30 years. That was 10 years ago.
Yes.
So is this ship turnaroundable? Or do we... Here's the thing. I think we're on the wrong ship anyway.
I agree with you.
So the ship we keep trying to turn around isn't supposed to turn around.
No, not at all. Doesn't matter who they put in the White House, Green House, Yellow House. Yeah, it's true. It doesn't, and it's the reason why it's called the White House in the first place. So that ship has to continue in that direction to allow the so-called powers that be to maintain the captivity of us, knowing the fact is that our season is here. Like our season is here. It's not 10 years from now, 20 years. Right now, it's entrepreneur. This pandemic has jump-started more entrepreneurship of melanated people than ever before. I'm talking about our people. I'm not just talking about other.
Right.
I'm talking exclusively. Every time I look, I'm talking to someone that's talking about, look, I couldn't find a job. I opened up a daycare. I couldn't find a job. I opened up my hair salon in my house. Everything you can think of under the sun, from making quilts to selling sweet potato pies. They're doing everything and making more money.
Yep.
If they were working for someone. So, I love this where it says, when those in turn looked at a thing, it says that they meant for it for evil, but Yahweh meant it for good for his people. And we're starting to jumpstart and wake up and change our diets. And we're starting to understand the concept of relationship building. When I say that, looking for a queen, having a king in your life, and not just having people. Our children are understanding that you need to have that strong, powerful, melanated king in there to regulate. Again, I told you, priesthood, provider, and protector. The children look and yearn for that leadership. And so that beautiful black queen, that melanated woman who's been praying and interceding and wanting to have the best, she has it when everything is kingdom alignment, by starting off by having him educated and knowing what's going on in every facet of his life around him.
So how do we break up? And this is going to be quick, people. Listen to this. And thank everyone for listening to Bridges Live with Dr. Paul Dyer. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer. You can always catch me on any of the social media, iHeart, and all your podcast channels, and all your social media. But we're visiting with Dr. C.J. Forrester. The man is just brilliant. But here again, you're going to have to look at this and read this over, or listen to it slowly. If you don't have questions, you was not listening. That's my first thing. If you don't have questions, you were not listening. Because it's not about what you understand. How are you understanding it? There's a difference. And that's where we talk about, how can we educate our people? We're not just giving them information. We're giving you a knowledge for you to receive so you can transmit to the high. Right? Because if you don't understand it, you can't transmit. And if you're unable to transmit, then you cannot bring to another, each one teach one.
Yes.
How do we get people to understand that what they're looking for is something that they're just wanting and not what they already have?
They have to first internally look at the spirituality of who they are. Let me expound on that layperson term. One can't just say, again, I'm a Christian. One has to understand the biblical knowledge that is being shared in that Bible, along with the Apocrypha. You need both. will expound on who you are, what makes you different, similar to a business, well, similar to a mission statement, who you are, what makes you different, and how are you doing things that allow other persons to find that they want to go ahead and work with you and be with you. That's the thing. We find that the churches, which have been worked, they have been taught, as you mentioned, to work against establishing us with an intimate relationship with the Most High Yah. I'm not talking about blessed heart, the Islamic Muslim movement or anything. I'm talking about as Hebraic people, knowing that you've gone to church. The church across the street is European descendant or referred to as Edomites by the Bible. Yours is across the street. Your pastor's excited about being able to get that other $300 to keep the church lights on. The one across the street to say, look, you know what? We had a bad day. We only drew in $10,000. And yet we're supposed to be praying and interceding and saying that we worship the same deity. Wrong. Something is radically wrong through that, as I mentioned. So we have to say that's not working for us. The intimacy that Yahweh is looking for us to do is for us to cry out to him, change our diet, as I mentioned, change our way of thinking. Stop watching all those shows on television. Pick up a book that's going to educate you, as you had mentioned earlier. And then we're not talking about, as you mentioned, the cartoons, the comic books, et cetera. So we're talking about books that's going to enhance personal development and finance, personal development and relationship, biblical understanding from, again, the melanated standpoint of view. I'm not talking about reading something from Dr. Charles Stanley or anything like that. Again, good books and all that. But yet, doesn't work for us. We need to go ahead and look at our millionaires and billionaires and our influencers, such as yourself and all, seeing what they're doing differently, what enhances them, what enlightens them, why they're not caught in the rigmarole of captivity and bondage through these pagan holidays and other things, why they're not eating all those hamburgers, taking care of their health. Health and mental health and spirituality go hand in hand as a unit. And when they have that unison thing going on, no one can deceive you. No one's going to come in there and share with you about political agendas that's going to work against you. Or the fact is that the separatism, because there's two different laws, that you'll be able to move through this matrix and be successful and get someone else to be, how would one say, now coming out of that, because you had mentioned, how do you get these people to do that? They need to wake up from the matrix. And the matrix is, just like the movie illustrated there, it's a system where people don't know what's happening, and they don't mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, ethically, and morally, they'll be able to have sound mind. The mind is the emotion, thought, and will. The brain is an instrument to be proactive. And once they get the cerebral going, spirituality through Yahweh is going to minister to them. They're going to get to the next level.
And that's where I was just about you brought your bridge. This is beautiful, because when people are not getting the information they want, they start to calcify the pineal gland, right? And that gland, it gets you to register to the Almighty High and to resonate through frequencies and vibration of your neurotransmitters, which actually activates your inner genius self. The things you're not learning is calcifying your pineal gland, right? It is calcifying it. It is frozen. All the music you think you're listening to, that you're bopping to, is calcifying your relationship to the ultimate high.
I totally agree. I could never understand how you can relate a woman to shorty. Hey, shorty, okay. I call a 6'2" woman shorty, and you're 5'2". Hey, shorty, so that doesn't make any sense. Or the woman who says, look, I love the basketball genius of the ingenuity of a person having athleticism. However, I told him, I said, that's all fine and well. But can he put a basketball in the spirituality? If he wants genius is common, if it equates to having Yahweh's knowledge, he that lacks wisdom, let him ask, that Yahweh will grant him that. And too many of us don't have a problem being common, but we have to understand common sense is not common.
Right.
Because genius becomes common if we have common sense. So the spirituality of looking at what it is as a young man, I know for me, I did. At 12 years old, I wrote down everything I was going to accomplish by the time I was 21. I did it. Wow. I did. Yeah. And so I was able to do it because I had a plan. You go in my room, I had scriptures everywhere. I had academic levels that I was going to go ahead and ascertain. I knew what I wanted to do physically. I had this thing about watching Popeye eating the spinach. So I always wanted to keep the body in shape. To this day, I'm extremely physically fit. I'm very strong. But again, that because spirituality, along with understanding who I am as a Hebrew king. Secondly, the humility of being able to ascertain the wisdom that allows me to read the word. And I'm talking about biblical word or anything else I have, because I'm a reader. I read everything you can think of under the side of a huge library. My thing is this: for Yahweh said, to whom much is given, much is required. So I'm able to, when people call upon me, I'm a co-owner of a medical staffing business, also getting ready to open up a CNA school that's been authorized by the federal government in the state of California. It's actually active as of this March. Also, next month and a half, we'll open up the home care division. But again, getting people employed, and the fact I do financial loans, and I can do them up to $30 million. So having different genres to be able to assist entrepreneurs with business plans, proposals, grants, HR sourcing, payroll registration, again, funding, a genre of things, financial plethora of things, allows our people to not walk around talking about, hey, look, I know McDonald's is hiring in Walmart, get that $15 now. And again, if that's all they can do, great. But let's wake up that we can own the business and do some hiring ourselves.
But we can also own it's not, even if you don't own the business, you can work for another person that is part of your community and still make the $15.
Yes, I did. That's what I was saying. Let's go ahead and have the businesses and all those where we can hire our own people, create our own financial legacy, do that wealth building, and then constantly educate them. I had one of the dear ladies was talking to me about working with their organization. They're going to have something going on in the healthcare field. And she called me and I told her, I said, look, I have something for your son. He's 18 years old. One has to do with fiscal spending. It's a 12-month calendar thing, really nice book for youth. And the other is called it's called the 10-Month Millionaires. Excellent book for youth. They can apply that, because I'm always telling the youth, you can have yours now. You don't have to wait till you're 65 and talk about retiring. You can help your loved ones. You can help your family by starting that ingenuity and creativity that you and I talked about earlier, where you're saying, where you take your brilliance somewhere else. You establish those companies with your insightfulness, your discernment, your wisdom, your cost-cutting ability, your analysis, and then all of a sudden they pay you that $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, but they're making millions off
of your back. So before we take off, and we're going to have you come back again and again, because this is something that needs to be beaten like a drum. And here's the thing, the difference between beaten into you and beaten like the drum. That rhythm will start to developing your rhythm. It's not our rhythm, it develops your rhythm. And as we beat this drum, your rhythm will start to come. I promise you. So the second thing, we stop rhythms and the rhythm of what we are internally by our own fears. Let's give people one idea how to break that fear just a little bit, so maybe they can start hearing that drum beat.
What they can do is they can look at the family member that has the ingenuity and creativity of, it could be the pies, it could be the fact that they want to open up a daycare or something like that. You get 4 family members that make about $25,000 or more. You collectively bring them together. They create a financial, I refer to a family trust bank. They then create a corporation to incorporate that entity, that ingenuity of a business together. Again, it could be daycare, it could be mama's pies, whatever the situation would be. And then as the monies are coming in, then start to buy dilapidated properties, build those things up to where you have streams of income coming in. But never forget, spirituality has to be first and foremost. And that's why I ask Yahweh to constantly bless you, Dr. Dyers, with good health, good life, with ingenuity, with peace, with your loved ones, and continue to grow in the audience, that each one of them that's listening today, that they'll be blessed by Yahweh, removing everything unclean, ungodly, and unnatural that has tried to delay and hinder their blessings. We luo, which means in Greek right now, to loose here, everything that has held them in captivity and free them up. But to find blessings, a good health and a good demeanor and disposition and clarity of mind, which is emotion, thought, and will, in Yahshua's name and Yahweh's name. Amen.
Brother, if people want to get a hold of you and say they heard it, they have some questions, how can they contact you?
And in fact, they can contact me at area code 559-330-8366. And let's grow the empire.
Thank you, my brother. We're gonna be shutting off the live stream here in a second. Thanks everyone for listening to Bridges Live. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer. That's Dr. CJ Forrester, and we are here to help you create your rhythm with the beating of this drum. And there's many of us beautiful teachers. You know, I have on my show. There's great information. Just reach out, reach up, and let us grab your hand by the lion's paw.
Amen. Transcend those curses and let the blessings of Yahweh shower you into where you can continue to be blessings to someone else. And in doing so, we can free ourselves from this system and start another thing called what? Building our empire.
That's right. God bless you, brother.